Day 5 of World War II, September 5, 1939, saw continued German advances in Poland and key diplomatic actions from neutral countries. The war was intensifying, but still largely confined to Poland and the surrounding region. Here are the main developments from that day. Germany's Blitzkrieg pushes deeper into Poland. German forces continued their Blitzkrieg assault, capturing more Polish towns and strategic locations. The rapid movement of tanks, infantry and air support was overwhelming the Polish army, which was still trying to organize a coherent defense. The Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, carried out further air raids, bombing Polish cities and military targets, adding to the chaos and destruction. German forces were closing in on Warsaw, the Polish capital, but heavy resistance from Polish troops and civilians meant that the city would hold out for several more weeks. The situation for Polish forces was becoming increasingly dire, as they were being outmaneuvered and outgunned on multiple fronts. Poland's defensive strategy. Polish forces were forced to retreat toward the Vistula River to regroup and establish more defensible positions. Despite the overwhelming pressure, the Polish military continued to put up pockets of strong resistance, particularly in the north and along key roads leading to Warsaw. Polish troops were still holding out in several key locations, such as Westerplatte, where the defenders continued to resist the German onslaught. United States declares neutrality. On September 5, 1939, US President Franklin D. Roosevelt officially declared the neutrality of the United States in the conflict. The US was determined to stay out of the war at this point, despite growing concerns over the German invasion of Poland and attacks on shipping. Roosevelt's neutrality proclamation followed earlier statements urging the belligerent nations to avoid attacks on civilians and non-military targets. Although the US government remained neutral, public opinion was starting to shift due to the news of the German invasion and U-boat attacks. The Neutrality Acts, which had been passed by the US Congress in the 1930s, limited American involvement in foreign conflicts, and these laws would continue to restrict US actions until the situation changed later in the war. Neutrality of other nations. Other nations also took steps to declare their neutrality in the conflict. Countries like Norway, Sweden and Belgium reaffirmed their neutrality, hoping to avoid being drawn into the war. Many European countries were bracing for the possibility of a wider war, particularly in Western Europe, where the situation remained tense as Germany prepared for potential conflict with Britain and France. Italian diplomacy. Italy, under the leadership of Benito Mussolini, continued to remain neutral despite its alliance with Nazi Germany through the Pact of Steel. Mussolini engaged in diplomatic efforts to mediate the growing conflict, proposing the idea of an international peace conference to resolve the tensions. However, his efforts were largely ignored, as Britain and France were now fully committed to opposing Germany. The first merchant ship sunk. The British freighter SS Bosnia becomes the first merchant ship sunk in the Battle of the Atlantic when it gets targeted off the coast of Portugal by U-boat U-47. Summary of Day 5. Germany's Blitzkrieg continued to overwhelm Polish defences, with the Wehrmacht making significant gains and closing in on Warsaw. The United States officially declared its neutrality in the conflict following President Roosevelt's proclamation. Italy remained neutral but engaged in diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict, proposing a peace conference. Several European nations reaffirmed their neutrality, hoping to avoid being drawn into the escalating war. By Day 5, World War II was rapidly escalating, though still largely confined to Poland. However, the declarations of neutrality by countries like the United States and Italy showed that many nations were wary of the growing conflict and its potential to spread across Europe and beyond.